Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and today we're going to take a look at the vintage collection. And I was kind of curious mainly about the HasLab Ghost and to see if there was any recent sales with the box art, the packaging that got shown. And I'm sure you guys have seen that on all the other big vintage collection channels, so I won't go into that in detail since I don't really cover breaking news. You guys can depend on Boss Bounty and all the other good folks like Only One Kenobi that talk about that stuff. But the box art did look really cool. I have to say that. But I was curious to see if any pre-sales on eBay, if there were any after that box art got announced. And I just wanted to see if there's any other kind of interesting sales for vehicles. And then I looked at some mainly TVC 1.0, a couple of funny ones. But, you know, the vintage collection to me seems like it's really struggling in terms of resale. I'm sure that the new items, and everyone's really excited about them. They're all buying up, you know, all this stuff. But I'm talking about resale for TVC 1.0. There just hasn't been a lot of really good or interesting sales here lately. So as a result, these videos have kind of suffered that I try to do weekly. But let's go ahead and dig into those in a second. But I had several shout outs I needed to give really quick. Jean-Eric Bjornskow. I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name too badly. He is over in Europe, and he is a new Patreon supporter. Thank you very much. And I also did receive several supers over the last week that I wanted to say thank you for. S-Wine 1958, Jim Walsh, Cameron Cornelius, and Sith Droid. Again, with some supers. Cameron, Sith Droid, and Jim Walsh especially. You guys have been very generous, and S-Wine or Swine 1958, thank you as well for the supers. You guys are really generous to do that. Thank you very much. All right, so let's talk first about some mint on cards and things like that. I mean, nothing too terribly interesting, but look at this sales price for an unpunched VCP03 rocket firing FET. It looked to be in pretty great shape. I mean, it's pretty clean. I don't really see much wrong with it. You know, there's a little bit of card wave at the bottom on the back of the card, but it looks pretty much flawless, right? And it sold for $77. I mean, wow. What are we getting to now where the rocket firing Boba Fett is selling for sub $100 consistently now? And that included the mailer box as well. So I did think it was kind of interesting looking at the figure in more detail. It looks like it's got some common problems that we usually associate with loose Kenner Boba Fett's. It's got some chipping or something going on the armor there, but I thought that was kind of an interesting point. But anyway, you know, I don't know whether this is a sign of the apocalypse or what, but I know it's a fairly common item. I know that you can find these pretty easily, but I was just a little surprised by how low that was, and maybe it's because of the condition of the figure. You know, the seller was kind enough to show some of the defects going on the figure, you know, factory paint errors, things like, or factory paint splash, things like that. But I was just surprised that it sold for $77. That's the cheapest that I can remember in a long time, if ever, since I started kind of covering vintage collection in detail. I will say that the prices are all over the map for Jocasta New. I mean, I think that this price was held back a little bit because, you know, it was shown that it was still factory sealed, but the photos were not great. It was kind of, you know, a little bit of edge wear, things like that. But that sold for $165. And then this one that had much nicer photos, it looked to be in much better shape, did sell for $215. So pretty wide price range again, but obviously the condition of the exterior box is certainly not as good on this one. But if you're just getting the figure inside, probably a pretty good deal relative to this one that sold for $50 more for Jocasta New. Jocasta New's taken a weird turn too, where for a while she got really expensive, and then she kind of came back down to like $150 or so, and now it's kind of slowly creeping back up again. And there's a couple that are like that, and Bastilla Shan is another one that comes to mind when I think about figures that, I mean, I've seen several that have sold over the last few months for closer to $100, and it seems like Bastilla Shan is kind of creeping back up again, which is kind of surprising. But that one is unpunched, US card, $170 on that one. This one is a sneaky one, and something I always talk about is, hey, keep an eye out for these US-based sellers that don't particularly know or care whether it is the US card or the Canadian card. So very clearly, this is the harder to find Canadian example of VC70 Ponda Baba with the multi-language name pill. So it's got 4 different languages there on the name pill. Obviously, you can tell in the upper left that it is the Kenner Canada card. Here's the back of it. It did have a price sticker on the back, but it sold for 75 bucks. And again, I'm not trying to say that this is pristine mint. It obviously has some edgeware to it, but if you're one of those guys that likes to collect multiple different variations for certain characters, or US and Kenner and the European release with the warning stickers, this was a pretty good deal at 75 bucks, just given that a near mint one would probably set you back pretty easily double for an unpunched Canadian VC70. So again, I know condition matters, and it matters more to some collectors than others, but if you're just into collecting different card back variations, you don't particularly have to have the most mint example out there. That was a pretty good deal there. Phantom Menace, Jar Jar Binks. Obviously the Phantom Menace was re-released in theaters, and I was shocked that, at least on the articles I read, the Phantom Menace finished second at this weekend's box office in the U.S. I don't remember what the total was, like 15, 16 million, something like that. But that just shows you that there is still demand for the prequel trilogy in theaters. And obviously it's a great movie to see in theaters, if only for the pod race scene and the final confrontation between Darth Maul, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Obi-Wan. But I was certainly surprised that it finished second overall behind Fall Guy in the theaters this weekend. Jar Jar Binks, this was the U.S. release, and this was a punched example for 110. I did find a couple of other examples right around this price point, plus or minus 10 or 15 bucks. But that's one that I feel like has held up pretty well, actually, relative to some of the others that maybe have had some had some price drops. But this one was not even a mint example, and the seller certainly showed that in the photos, that the blister had some dings and cracks or something going on there. But even that one still sold for 110. And I found some that were higher than this, and for an unpunched example, I've found several that were closer to $200. So Jar Jar Binks, maybe it's the nostalgia associated with the movie being back in the theater. I don't know, but this Jar Jar Binks seems to be holding up pretty well. Next up, we had Princess Leia in her Bespin gown, the VC111. This was the U.S. card unpunched. Trusted seller Power Droid that had some really nice near mint TVC 1.0 that he's been selling slowly that are ungraded. He's usually known for having AFA graded examples, but he just has stacks of them in his closet here, which is how I used to roll too. But this one did sell for $130, and for the most part, his items only have one photo, but you're probably going to be okay, because he is a pristine kind of collector of sealed cases and things like that, and seems to have a really nice collection of very, very nice TVC 1.0, a lot of SDCC exclusives, things like that he's been selling off here lately. This was a funny one that I had to show you. Some crazy person had 29 of the Solo Star Wars story version, the young Lando, in his kind of very sabacc playing outfit there with the cape and the scarf and everything. And I am shocked by how many that is. It's just crazy to see it. We talk about all the time about the Bespin version of Lando, being a peg warmer, but this guy was hoarding all of the young version of Lando Calrissian. So he had 29 of them, and he sold them for $100. And apparently he had 2 quantities of that. So he actually had close to 60 of the Solo movie adaptation for Lando Calrissian, the young Lando. So that is VC139. That is just crazy that he had 2 lots of 29, and they both sold for $100 plus $678 shipping. Really funny there. Now let's dig into some vehicles, and we're going to finish off obviously with the Ghost, because I just thought that I would be curious to see if there's any kind of pop in pre-order purchases on eBay, which I do not recommend, and I'm sure we'll talk about, but I was just curious, and so as a result, I just started pulling up some other recent vehicle sales. But here's a mint and seal box Kmart exclusive Scout Walker that sold for $110. But I got these a little bit out of order, but here's one graded item. I only included one graded item this week, but this is a CAS 85 Droids version of C-3PO, the Target exclusive. So CAS 85, that sold for 145, which big number, but that is a sneaky one that ungraded goes for, you know, what, 15, 20 bucks. Nobody seems to care about it. But I do see a lot of graded examples of this that go for a lot of money. So whether it's CAS or AFA graded. So you just can't tell sometimes what people are going to dig. But I did like the box art on that one, or the card art on that one. Very nice. Obviously not as good as the Boba Fett, but pretty cool. All right, back to the vehicles. We had the original Luke Skywalker X-Wing. That one sold for $195 plus $6 shipping. We had the Target exclusive Imperial TIE Fighter, obviously the first version, not the Walmart exclusive reissue, but that one sold for $160. The reissue Walmart exclusive goes for like 75 bucks now. Very, very inexpensive, but this original issue Target exclusive from 2011, excuse me, goes for pretty good money, and that one seemed to be in pretty good shape. Did have one crunch in the corner that still sold for $160 plus shipping. The Y-Wing fighter, this one sold for $195 plus $17 shipping. Again, I never have understood why they put Admiral Akbar in the Y-Wing when he's too busy running the battle for Death Star 2 from the safety of his bridge. But this one was the Toys R Us exclusive Y-Wing. Very nice looking box art there. Now we dig into some HasLab items to wrap things up. So, I thought maybe that the Mandalorian Razor Crest, I wanted to talk briefly about this because consistently, even still sealed in the shipper box, as this one was, as you can see here, it's been consistently going for $550. And obviously it jumped up to like, what, $750, $850-ish, and has slowly been coming back down. And I think you'll find that the Ghost does the same thing. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I don't think that the Ghost will have the following that the Mandalorian does, that the Katana Sail Barge does, since it's related to the original trilogy. And I just think that the number of people that really care about the Rebels Ghost is a lot fewer than maybe people think. Because this was a debate that was going on some of the Facebook TVC groups, because some of these recent sales were shocking. This seller had 5, but listed at $950. Now, again, these are pre-orders. You have no buyer protection. By the time this actually ships, you're not going to have any buyer protection from this seller that he's actually going to ship them when he gets them in next fall. So don't pre-order them on eBay, especially at this price, which is what, $250 or whatever it is more than what the original HasLab backer price was. Just be patient and wait for these to come out and flood eBay. There's going to be a flood of these on eBay, and I would wager that they're going to get right back. They're going to kind of follow the same path that the Razor Crest did. Once the Razor Crest got in hand, the prices did escalate pretty quickly, but just as quickly the prices dropped back down to the point now where they're at $550. And $550. Now this one did have $100 shipping, so it's really $650. Okay. So, but I do see them sell very regularly. I've seen as low as $450 for the Razor Crest. And in my opinion, this one will probably continue to come down just because the Razor Crest is come and gone. It's been blown up. It's not coming back. And while it is an awesome item, beautiful, just absolutely amazing engineering on it. And same with the Ghost. The Ghost is obviously going to have amazing engineering. It's going to be massive, though. And I think that people are going to get sick of having to store these, and there's just going to be a flood of them at auction as well on eBay at some point in the future. Maybe not this year, maybe this fall because of Christmas and everything. Prices will remain and demand will remain really high. But I think going into the next new year, going into tax season especially, I would think by January, February, March, you're going to start seeing some pretty good deals on the Ghost. So not only do you not get buyer protection from pre-ordering it from eBay, but you're paying too much for it. And there was another one. This seller had 4 available. One of them sold at $1,000. $1,000 plus $100 shipping. That's $1,100 with 0 buyer protection. So don't do it. Just be patient. Just wait. It is amazing. I know it includes some awesome, carded figures as well. All that good stuff. I think it's an amazing item. But I do think that there is a much smaller fan base for the Rebels team. I'm a huge fan of the Rebels. I love the Rebels. I just dig them. But I just think that, I'm a huge fan, and I didn't pre-order it because I don't have the space for this thing, all right? And for how many there are out there that have been backed, I personally think you're going to see prices drop pretty precipitously in early 2025. Let me know in the comments as you're leaving a like, hopefully, what you think about that. Again, I want to give one final thanks to Jean-Eric Bjornscal, Swine, or S-Wine, 1958, Jim Walsh, Cameron Cornelius, and Sith Droid. Thank you all so much for the supers and for becoming a Patreon. I really appreciate you guys watching this video, and I will be back very soon.